Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy. Welcome to One-to-One. Not long ago, the buzzword for where modern society was headed was WWW, or the World Wide Web. And it was an indication that so much of what we needed to know and what we were going to do with it was going to be online. Today, the word AI, or artificial intelligence, is on everybody's lips. It's flooding our lives, bringing with it euphoria about endless possibilities, and on the other hand, fear of being subjugated to it. So what is artificial intelligence exactly? And is it something we should simply embrace, or is it something we should be much more skeptical about? Here to answer some of these questions are Susan Epstein, Professor of Computer Science at Hunter College and the CUNY Graduate Center. She's an expert on artificial intelligence and machine learning. With her is Raj Korpan, Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Hunter College. He focuses on human-robot interaction and explainable AI. Welcome to both of you. So Susan, why don't we start with what is artificial intelligence?
Artificial intelligence is the simulation of intelligent human behavior on a machine. It's a way of getting what you want with what you've got, is what someone said to me recently, and I think that's really a good idea. It's the process that we go through, we hope, to achieve our goals. And if you want a machine to achieve your goals, you have to give the machine the goals, and then you have to give it a process. So when we do something like that, we build what we call agents. An agent might be a robot, but it might also just be something you see on a screen that might speak with you or text with you.
And when people talk about AI, they talk about data. It's a connection between computers and a source of a lot of data. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, people collect data from the minute they're out in the world. And we have enormous streams of data coming in. A computer, if it's just sitting there, has nothing. We have to feed it information, and it takes us many hours to feed information that people get much more quickly, in part because we have multiple sensors we're using. We see, we hear, we smell, we touch, and all of that comes in simultaneously. People normally think of data in the context of a computer as numbers, or numbers and words. And it takes a lot of work to describe the world that way to a machine.
Raj, AI has actually been around a long time. It's not something that's new, is it?
No, absolutely not. AI actually began around 1950 with Alan Turing, who published on computing machinery and intelligence. And so it's been around for almost 70 years at this point. People have been working on AI systems for a long time. What has changed recently is the hardware has finally caught up to the ideas that have been around for a long time.
So there's a lot more, it's being used a lot more.
It's also faster.
It's also faster, okay.
And more compact. And we also have more data, because so much of our world is electronic. Even before we get to a computer, we're collecting information all the time. So the combination of the increased ability to process data and the quantity of data available gives us a lot more power.
AI seems to be, it looms in a huge way. It seems to be huge. What would you compare it to in terms of previous technological advancements?
I think the internet is a big advancement, invention of the television, right? So these major technological advances that changed our society and the way that we communicate with one another, I would say AI is on par with that. It has this ability to really change how we see the world, how we interact with the world, our daily lived experience. So I think there is a parallel to the major shifts we've seen with these previous technologies.
We've got an even older one, the Jacquard loom, 1804. Henri Jacquard invented an automatic weaving machine, was put to work in Great Britain, and when they did that, there were riots in the streets. because people feared that they were going to lose the weavers believed correctly that they were going to lose their jobs to these machines, that they were going to be put out of work. And I think in terms of the other piece of our day-to-day lives, besides communication, is how we work and what we do when we're at work. Mm-hmm. And I think AI is changing that too.
And there probably were a lot of people who were put out of work, right?
The loom, absolutely, because it was actually the beginning of automating factories all over, not just weaving.
Let's talk about, there are ways that AI is being used right now that people don't know that it's AI. Could we talk about some of the common uses of AI already?
Absolutely. I mean, it is being infused in all aspects of our life and society. So for example, in healthcare, people are using it to diagnose diseases, discover new drugs, development of new types of treatments. But also facial recognition is another massive used type of AI system, both by governments, police agencies, militaries, companies that are using that kind of technology as well. I think you're also seeing AI systems deployed in education, in financial industry as well, right, for automated trading. So it's really pervasive, right, where you might not think there's AI. I think now is really a push. Where can we plug and play AI into our industry, into our expertise to help us?
Let's talk about what AI is not. For instance, there's a TV show that's called How It's Made. Mm-hmm. And it shows you how certain instruments, devices that we use in everyday life, how they're actually made, piece by piece. I mean, so suppose you see about how they make bicycle helmets, and there's a succession of machines, and one will make a mold for the helmet, and another may spray the plastic or whatever is on the outside, and another may do a chemical process on that to keep it in place, and another puts on the strap. Is that AI, or is that just automation? Or is it, what is that? Is that AI, or is that something different? I'm talking about often the machines in the assembly line in a lot of factories.
To the extent that that machine gets to make choices, you might be verging on it. Otherwise, if it's just doing the same thing over and over again, it's a machine. It
would be pre-programmed.
Yeah, exactly. But you can pre-program a machine to learn to do its job better. Mm-hmm. And now you're moving into the field of AI.
What do you see as the advantages of artificial intelligence?
A second pair of hands, a second pair of eyes. In Hungary a few years ago, they determined that the AI agent they had accessible to them was better at reading mammograms to look for breast cancer than the radiologists who were humans. And thinking through it impressively, they decided, and it is now, it's in place, this is what happens in Hungary, that everyone has two people who read the mammogram. One's a person, a human radiologist, the other isn't a person at all. It's this agent that was built to detect it. The agent's still doing better than the human is, but they don't always disagree with each other. And if one misses what the other sees, that's giving you a second opinion. So that's a terrific example. Mm-hmm. A second pair of hands, they're things that are too heavy for people to lift or too awkward. Or if you've ever tried to put together a piece of furniture that comes in parts, you know you need another human there or something to hold it, right? That's a second pair of hands. If it were a robot who were helping you do it, it has to watch you, it has to figure out what your intent is, it has to see. It's not going to assemble the same piece of furniture with the same human every day. It's not like your helmet.
And there's tremendous opportunity to just help fill the gap where there aren't enough humans to do these very vital roles in our society. Things like home care for the elderly. We just don't have enough people. There's a massive shortage of nurses, right, of educational specialists, technical assistants, all of these types of jobs that we need to fill, but we don't have the humans to do it.
Yeah.
Why not use AI systems that might be able to assist right, and do these jobs for us, or at least collaborate with us to do them.
Is the way that AI thinks the same way that the average person would think, the way a really smart person would think? Is the way that AI thinks representative of the people in the world?
Cognitive architectures are designs for reasoning and making decisions. And there are many of them. Many people build cognitive architectures in the hope that they will be able to do multiple kinds of tasks, like play games, but also help a robot find its way around a new place. Cognitive architectures come in many different flavors. Some of them don't bear any resemblance to what I think people do in their brains. The big disparity is because our sensors are so different from a machine's sensors that we have to translate back and forth. Eventually, we are all processing electrical signals, both humans and computers.
Susan, you just came back from an international conference on AI. How many people were there, and what were people talking about? What seemed to be most on their minds?
Okay. There were probably 3,000 or 4,000 people. It's hard because you don't know if you want to count the press or not. There's usually a lot of them. An award that was given to Milan Tambe, who is a computer scientist, for his work for the social good, AI for the social good. He had done an entirely new approach to some mathematical stuff that we don't have to talk about, but he'd been able to use it first to catch people who were trying to poach rhinoceroses without locating the rhinoceros. It was just marvelous work. And they cut down how many rhinoceroses were being killed with this algorithm. Then they turned it around and they used it to help literally millions of pregnant women in India who were impoverished, were not getting medical care, prenatal care, and they sent them messages and learned how to make use of the limited resources these NGOs had to help, and made a tremendous impact. The same thing, again, the same work, worked on distributing HIV vaccines in Africa. And again, it was a matter of getting in contact with human beings, holding their attention, and helping them do the right thing.
Okay. Using AI for good.
Social good.
For social good. But there are also a lot of concerns about the ethical issues surrounding AI. What are some of those, Raj?
I think there's a number of different issues we can talk about. One, privacy is a major concern, right? How is our data being collected online? How is it being used then to develop these AI systems? What is it learning about us? And then as these systems are deployed and we interact with them, what further data is it collecting from us and using? There's also a big issue of AI systems perpetuating biases and stereotypes, right? They're trained on data collected from people. People are biased, and so our algorithms will be biased, right? And these algorithms are written by human beings who themselves have their own internal biases. And so how do we build AI systems that don't just perpetuate this harm on people that are already marginalized and harmed by different technologies in our society?
Hasn't that been an issue with facial recognition devices? And if so, what's happened?
Absolutely, right? Facial recognition has been used, for example, to identify suspects in crimes. And it has misidentified people of color and actually resulted in arrests of innocent people, right? And there's been documented cases of this happening multiple times. Other folks have tried to use it to help determine what kind of sentences to give people, right, in the criminal justice system. Again, perpetuating biases against certain people and less for others. So facial recognition, by its very nature, going to start sorting us into categories when human beings are so multifaceted, right? And that sorting into categories is one step away from harming people based on how they look.
Do you think that members of the general public have a lot of misconceptions about what AI is and does. Susan?
I think that's probably encouraged by the media. I remember a headline, "Oh, robot overlords take our jobs but don't kill us." I don't think that's about to happen as long as we can still unplug them. I don't think we have anything to worry about. And so we exacerbate things simply because it's exciting. Nobody wants to read boring stuff, so you make it more exciting. The people who build these agents or figure out how to make these robots do things will be the first to tell you they make a lot of mistakes. They get it wrong. We get it wrong. We go back and forth. None of this is going to be foolproof ever. But then again, humans aren't foolproof.
Right. Raj, you specialize in robotics. What I know about is the little the robot housekeeper.
Yes.
Vacuum
cleaners.
that you see on TV, and then it hits the wall. Tell us about something that's going on in that area that you find interesting.
So I think robots have this ability that is more than just what our computers do, because they're actually physically there in front of us. Like, we can interact with it, it can interact with the world around it, right? So it has this ability to help people, for example, lift heavy objects that they may not be able to otherwise. Where I see some really exciting applications has been with deploying robots to help children, especially children with autism, for example, being able to learn social skills. And research has shown that these children are able to learn many more skills when they have a robot companion than not. So there's potential there. There's also a lot of great work about robot companions for elderly people. There's an epidemic of loneliness that is happening now, especially as our population worldwide grows older and older. And so where can we introduce robot tools, robot systems that can help resolve those kinds of things?
Susan, people get really nervous when you start talking about driverless cars. I think it was Los Angeles just announced that it's starting a fleet of driverless taxis.
Right. They are going to have fewer accidents. The good ones are going to have fewer accidents than human drivers. They are going to continue to make mistakes. There will always be mistakes. But again, we hold machines, or AI if you prefer, to a higher standard than we hold ourselves or each other. We're much more tolerant if someone drops a glass and it breaks. If your robot were to do that in your kitchen, you'd be very upset. The driving part, there will always be what we call edge cases. There will be unanticipated situations which will happen hopefully only once, and they will fix that piece of the reasoning. But there are some things you're not going to be able to prevent. There was an accident we were talking about in San Francisco in February of this year, where a driverless car hit a person with a bicycle. After the accident was over, that person got up and walked away. Apparently there were no life-threatening injuries. But the reason that the person was hit was because the truck that it was following obscured the view of the driverless car. And it would have obscured our view too. We couldn't see it. So there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be accidents.
To what extent are you using AI in teaching or teaching about it?
We want to train our students, especially computer science students, who may not go out in the world and create the next AI system, but they're certainly going to be interacting with it. So for me, I think it is incredibly important to teach them how these systems work, but also the ethical implications of them. How do you use them, and how do you make decisions where you keep in mind the impact of these systems on people? It is really becoming pervasive in education, I think, more broadly. I think across disciplines, people are contending with this. Just today, I just saw a talk about how they were using ChatGPT to teach about Shakespeare.
Tell us about ChatGPT.
Yes, of course. So ChatGPT is what we call a large language model. It is basically reading all the data it can get its hands on the internet, all the text data that it can find, and it is basically using probabilities to generate text. So you can think of it as a very, very sophisticated autocomplete, right? When you're writing on your phone, it's predicting the next word. In a sense, that's what ChatGPT does, just on a much larger scale. And it has really blown up, right, over the last few years because it's now at the fingertip of anyone who wants to use it, right? That's why we feel this sense of AI is all around us and it's exploded everywhere. It's because now we have something we can actually interact with. It's not just experts.
So people who don't feel that they know how to write an essay or a paper use this to write it for them?
Yes, so you can put in an essay prompt and it will generate a nicely written essay, but one that is, at least for us as educators, pretty obviously written by ChatGPT. It has its own style. It is often full with kind of fluff language, nothing too deep, very surface level. So the example that I was talking about teaching Shakespeare, this professor is teaching about Macbeth and comparing how two different characters react to death. And in the past, he would have had students write an essay looking at the themes of how death occurs and how characters respond to it in that play. Well, what he did instead was he put the prompt in ChatGPT, had it write an essay, and then had his students grade the essay looking for the way that it analyzed Macbeth, what was the types of allegories and literary analysis that ChatGPT did. And what did the students find? They really learned that ChatGPT is not doing an in-depth analysis, that it is missing a lot of the key and important parts of doing this kind of literary work. So it's a new way to approach kind of education, incorporating these tools.
For each of you, what excites you most about the possibilities for AI and what worries you the most? I'll start with you, Susan.
What excites me the most is that we're making the future. And sometimes we don't always love the future when it appears, especially if it appears very quickly. But we're giving everyone access to, for the most part, to something like a generative program. ChatGPT is a generative program. It produces information for you based on the data it has. What concerns me about it is the fact that this process is going to be what we call recursive. ChatGPT has to be trained. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money. Also takes a lot of electricity. The AI community and the use of the agents they produce is now consuming 0.5% of the world's electricity. That's a lot. It's also extremely difficult to keep these machines cool. They use water. So we're using water, we're raising the temperature. All the bad things are there. And when you're finished with it, you have to figure out a way to scale it down so that people who just have a smartphone can use it too. That's happening. That's happening. The other thing that I'm concerned about is this data issue. Raj mentioned bias before. Because you retrain something like ChatGPT periodically, otherwise it wouldn't know what happened since, 1929 or something. You have to keep retraining it, and you give it literally billions or trillions of words when you do this. Where do you get that much text? Not enough books in the world to provide it. You go on the web and you take websites, you take tweets, you take any kind of communication that you can get that people made. But you know what else is going up on the web now is all the stuff that ChatGPT is writing. So it's going to have a great deal of opportunity to copy itself. And it's going to wind up, I think, increasingly becoming not exactly trite, but certainly boring, because it will make its kind of writing more probable than human writing. And that's a real concern to me.
Very interesting.
And the other concern I have educationally, I have a student in a class who was asked to write a proposal for a term project. As soon as I saw this one hunk, it was very clear, and you know it when you see it. It's very easy. it was clear it was not his work.
Yeah.
And I dropped it into a program I have, which will tell me to what extent, what's the likelihood that this was written by a generative program. It's the first time I ever got a 100% score.
Wow.
And the way you tell is because it's beautifully written, totally grammatical, nice vocabulary, uses the right words, and doesn't have any depth to it. It's sort of like reading air.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, you tell me what you're going to do, don't just tell me what the words you think you should say are. And it's saying the words it thinks it should say.
Right.
So many people say that it doesn't understand.
I think just to add on to that, a really interesting thing that I heard to describe ChatGPT, and it's a stochastic parrot, right? It's a very concise way to put it, right? It's repeating what it's heard before, and what it's heard is trillions of lines of text, but in some ways it is just a parrot, right? It's just repeating what it's heard. So what excites me, I think I'm really excited about the opportunities for AI to actually help people's lives get better. And I think that's what really excites me about working in AI, working in robotics. I think the harms, what kind of makes me a little bit nervous is that people can use these tools and misuse them.
Yeah.
While there are people using it for good, there are certainly people who are using it to steal people's identities, to steal their data, to financially harm them, and so on and so forth. And so where we can have kind of this robust protections in place, whether it's regulatory, whether it's within our computing profession, building ethical standards, however we can try to protect people from these harms and stop them from happening, I think is going to alleviate my concerns in that regard.
And the way we're going to fix that is by education. So
Yes.
my hope is for the next generation, the one that we're training.
Nope.
Right.
I just came off of a 3.5-year effort with literally 900 people all over the world to develop the current recommended curriculum for computer science. It's used in more than 147 countries. It only happens once every 10 years, so we better hurry up and start the next one, I guess. But the two things that I was most delighted to see were, one, that it has infused AI into every single subject area because they know it's there. And this is a group effort by educators and people from industry. Name your big company, there were people involved. The second one is every single topic has a way of discussing ethics if you're a computer scientist. And from our very baby freshmen on up, we are going to teach that. Some of us have been doing it already. We want to scare them, we want to tell them how powerful they can be, and we want to tell them to do the right thing.
I'm afraid we're out of time. I'd like to thank Susan Epstein, Professor of Computer Science at Hunter College and the CUNY Graduate Center, and Raj Korpan, Assistant Professor of Computer Science at Hunter, for joining me today. To learn about our upcoming shows, you can follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at 1-to-1 CUNY TV. For the City University of New York and 1-to-1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy.